Shalom Sazria Metzora, Tovshin Zion. Baruch Hashem, we have a lively crowd here tonight. And each and every year, since we began this year, and we're now, Baruch Hashem, in our 8th year of saying this year, whenever we get to S.S.S. Sazria Metzora, we make sure to mention one very, very important subject. And a subject that really one can never get tired speaking about, and it's something that actually requires and begs for constant review, and that is the severity of the Aveira of Lashon Hara. And that's the overriding theme that we've spoken about basically every single year that we've said the Shir on these Parshiyos. And there are times that these Parshiyos are separate too, when it's during a leap year, and we've spoken about this Indian both times during those years. And aside from the fact that it was one of the primary reasons why a person would be plagued with a neged tzaras, Chazal tell us that speaking and perpetuating Lashon Hara brings tremendous amounts of bad and negative things to the entire world. And avoiding this sin really requires a person to train themselves over and over. And you wonder and you think that we've said the same theme over now for our 8th year. To avoid this severe Aveira of Lashon Hara, a person really needs to train themselves to do something that's very, very tough. And one of the toughest things for a person to do, and if you haven't figured it out yet, the thing that you need to train yourself to do is basically to close your mouth more often than not. A person needs to train themselves that when you have that impulse to open your mouth and say something really good and something that's really, really going to get you somewhere and really going to hurt the other person, when you have that impulse, it requires training and constant review of this Indian of Lashon Hara. It requires that constant review to train yourself to not do it and to not say anything. And one also needs to know that if you're not successful at that, once you have opened your mouth and said something, then most of the time it is extremely, extremely difficult to take it back. It's too late. Once the cat is out of the bag, and once you do something like that, and the Lashon Hara is said, very, very difficult to fix things up. Very, very difficult to go back and repair the damage that you've done. And you really need to learn Sfarim, and we've mentioned this, and we've given a plug, of course, to the Sifrei Chafetz Chaim. And the Chafetz Chaim always tells us specifically the ramifications and the calamities that can result and that have resulted from somebody who has a loose tongue, somebody that speaks Lashon Hara. And the amount of family strife and friends that have been broken up, and the amount of machlokes that has been caused by people saying the wrong thing or opening their mouth when they should not. The Chafetz Chaim tells us that it's literally possible. And the Chafetz Chaim, if the Chafetz Chaim says it, then we can trust, of course, that this is the way it is. The Chafetz Chaim says that a person could think that they spend their whole life, you hear, and you're learning, and you're doing chesed, and you're doing mitzvahs, and a person can come up to the next world after 120, and you know what happens? You come up to the next world, and the person is actually devoid and bereft of anything that he thinks he's going to get schar for. Any of the mitzvahs, all of the chesed, all of the Torah, you can come to the next world, and you look around and you have nothing with you. Nothing's there. And why is that? Because a person speaks Lashon Hara. And really you need to look in the Shmirat HaLashon, and it's kedai to learn it, and to learn it over, and you'll get much more of a picture of what's going on with this Indian. And one of the interesting things the Nesivos Shalom brings down, and one of the interesting things that's repeated in our Parshiyas many, many times, is this Indian of 7 days. Have you ever noticed, if you were Mavasedra this week already, I'm sure you came across it many times, that the Indian 7 days. What the Metzora we know, when there was a Neged Tzaras, the Metzora was locked away for 7 days. So too, our Parsha tells us that the tomb of a woman who gives birth is also for 7 days. Other tumas, the tomb of Tumas Meis, once again, 7 days. One time after the other, all of these things, all of these Neged Tzaras that are mentioned, and all these tumas that are mentioned in our Parshiyos, the way to remedy, the way out of these tumas is by waiting 7 days. And that must be, says the Nesivos Shalom, something significant. Things don't just happen by chance. 7 days has to be tell us something. On the other hand, the number 7 we know is also extremely prominent in Yoni Kedusha. For example, Shabbos we know is the 7th day of the week. The 2 Yomim Tovim of Pesach and Sukkot also are 7 days, Midoraisa, right? In Eretz Yisrael, those Yomim Tovim, Pesach and Sukkot are 7 days. Shavuos, the Yom Tov that we will have in a couple of weeks, Shavuos comes after counting 7 times 7. 7 times 7 days, 7 weeks. Once again, the number 7. Chazal tell us in Vayikra Rabbah Chavtes, Kol Hashvim Chavivim. Not just the number 7, but all things 7, all things that are multiple of 7 is Chavivim. They're very likable. HaKadosh Baruch Hu likes it. They are very, very chaviv. And we really need to understand, says in Nesivos Shalom, what's going on here. First of all, on the side of Tumah, and on the side of Tzaras, on the side of every type of Neged Tzaras, 7 days. And on the other hand, Mitzad, on the side of Kedusha, what is it about 7 and 7 days? So Nesivos Shalom brings from the Birkas Avraham, Chusi Yagan Aleinu, on the Pasuk in Parshas Bahar, the Pasuk tells us by Shemitah, which incidentally, of course, is also 7, V'shavsa ha'aretz Shabbos Lashem, that the land, the earth, V'shavsa ha'aretz, the land will rest, Shabbos Lashem, a Shabbos for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And says the Birkas Avraham, a beautiful, beautiful pshat in this pasuk. What does it mean, V'shavsa ha'aretz Shabbos Lashem? We know, we've discussed so many times over the years what a Shabbos can do for a person. Wherever a person is, wherever you're holding in your life, whatever you've done, you can turn it around on Shabbos. Shabbos has a tremendous influence on a person. So this pasuk is telling us, says the Birkas Avraham, V'shavsa ha'aretz Shabbos Lashem, that even a person who is as low as the aretz, a person has done things which are very, very earthly, a person has given in to their taiva, V'shavsa ha'aretz, even something which is low like aretz, still there is a bechina of Shabbos. You're able to use the Shabbos to come back. Every single person, no matter where you've been, no matter what you've done, every person has this koyach of Shabbos inside themselves. Even the aretz has Shabbos. It's a Shabbos once every 7 years. But even the earth, the lowest thing that man knows, even that has Shabbos. Shabbos is a spiritual day that gives life for everything that comes after it too. You pass a Shabbos, you're a changed person. Anything that goes through Shabbos comes out on the other side as totally different. And this is the way, this is the reason why the Medrash told us that Hashem likes 7. You know why? Because 7 represents breathing new life into the creation. Shabbos is the constant. Even, we've said this also a number of times, a person thinks that they're a 0. I haven't learned, I haven't davened, I haven't done anything good recently, so 0, 0, 0. But Shabbos is a constant. And you know what happens when you put a constant? All you need to do is put a 1 in front of all those zeros. One little day in a week, Shabbos. You put a 1 in front of, the more zeros you have, if you put a 1 in front of it, You know what that adds up to? It multiplies exponentially. Those zeros become a million, a billion, a trillion. Those numbers add up to so much, and they multiply, and they turn into something very, very big, something very, very great. So all these things of Tumah and Metzora in the Parsha, it is for this reason, therefore, that they revolve around the number 7. The Torah is telling us that Shabbos is able to heal every single thing, any Tumah, any Metzora. We know in any 7 days, if the Metzora has to be Michutz HaMachaneh for 7 days, one of those days is guaranteed to be Shabbos. So a person will always have a Shabbos, and that's the reason everything is 7 days. In order to lift yourself up, you have to have Shabbos. Shabbos is intrinsically tied to Kedusha. The Pasuk tells us, and we in Parshas Bereshit, and we say it in Kiddush, Vayivorech Elokim es Yom HaShvi'i Vayikadesh Osoi. That Shabbos has 2 things. Vayivorech Elokim, Shabbos has a blessing naturally attached to Shabbos. Vayivorech Elokim es Yom HaShvi'i, but it also has something else. Vayikadesh Osoi. We see that every Shabbos, when we come to every Shabbos, it's bringing 2 things. It's bringing bracha and kedusha. It's something that every person needs to remember, and every person needs to know. Shabbos comes, you automatically get 2 things. And you know where the bracha comes from? And Nesivos Shalom says that the bracha comes from the sur meira va'asei toiv. The bracha of Shabbos comes from the fact that when Shabbos comes, we have a bigger awareness of where we need to be. In Shabbos, we leave the world of Tumah. We leave the world of indulgence. We're sur meira. We go away from that. And that brings tremendous bracha. And the Kedusha comes from the Asay Toiv. Where on every Shabbos you can be different. You can eat differently. You can speak differently. You can sleep differently. You can learn differently. You have Suda Shabbos. You treat your family, you treat the people around you differently. You have the opportunity also, not just for Sur Meirah, which automatically you leave when you come to Shabbos, but there's Asay Toiv. The things that you do are also can reach. You're doing the same thing. You're eating, you're sleeping, you do the same thing during the week, but you could reach very, very special high levels. You get special siyata d'shmaya to do it too. So Pesach and Sukkot, like we've mentioned, the Yom Tovim in the Torah that are 7 days, they're 7 days for the same reason that Shavuos, when we come to Kabbalah Torah now, is also 7, which is 7 times 7. Why? Because on every Yontif, the influence and the power of Shabbos is what gives the Yom Tovim that extra special Kedusha. Every Yontif, these Yom Tovim have to go through 7. They have to go through a Shabbos. They have to go through counting of 7 too. So for a person who is Tomei, or a person who is a Metzora, you are distanced from the Machaneh, they're distanced from Klal Yisrael for 7 days. And every one of those days includes a Shabbos. Every person needs, when you're down and you're feeling down, every person needs to feel that light of Shabbos. And we have Sheva Shabbosois Tmimois Tiyena. The Pasuk tells us about the Yontif of Shavuos. We're counting Sfira. Sheva Shabbosois Tmimois Tiyena. That now before Shavuos we can learn from this Pasuk, let at least the Shabbosois during the Sfira be whole. We're going to come to Shabbos tomorrow night. Sheva Shabbosois Tmimois Tiyena. During the week, everything is so crazy, and we're busy, and we're so occupied. But at least let's try to take the Shabbos. Use the number 7. Use the Shabbosos of Sfira. Sheva Shabbosois Tmimois Tiyena. Let the Shabbos be the springboard for us to make our way, first of all, out of the Tumah, out of what we know the Shabbos could bring us, but also to help us climb spiritually where we can be at the Yontif of Shavuos, where we're able to actually have a Kabbalah Torah in just a few weeks from now.